Hey there, Goa fans. Mark DJ Solitaire here with episode 52 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I share in each episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. We are wrapping up season two, so to speak. My second year in the scene from roughly the autumn of 95 through to the summer of 96, tracks that I basically remember hearing then or that were released at the time. And I'm just sharing, some of my favorite tracks. I really can't do every single one. I mean, it would probably be 100 at least per season. So doing what I can, might start producing more than one episode a week. We'll see how this goes. But I'm wanting to move on to the 96, 97 season pretty soon because holy moly, there's a whole bunch of absolutely astounding tracks from that period. So I was debating quite a bit what to feature, and I couldn't leave this one out, particularly because it comes from really quite an important album that was released in that 95, 96 season. And yet again, I remember walking into the Cisco CD and record shop in Shibuya, the techno shop where everybody went. A lot of the artists went there when they were visiting as well, and all the local DJs and fans went to this little spot. And I walked in and saw there this beauty, a Prana album, the first CD on Matsuri Productions. With this, of course, super psychedelic artwork, which was not done by Organics, in fact, was done by someone, it's a painting done by someone whose name is Tonie, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The inside graphics were done by Organics, which was a trio of designers who were friends of Tsuyoshi's and worked with him for all this Mitsuri stuff. Jun, Shige, and Katsu. And we've done a couple of Prana tracks before, both under the name Prana as well as under the moniker Tayo. And that Tayo name was used when they did their EP for Step to House, which basically, not exactly EP, I mean, it was enough tracks to be a full album. But they used the name Tayo so as not to have the name Prana on more than one label at the same time. And so Prana was releasing tracks on Inter One at that period, different label that is no longer with us. And Tayo itself is the last track on this album. And this was, in fact, a track definitely was around in 94. There's film footage of it being played at the end of a Return to the Source party. Slow BPM, and everybody was still going for it. There's a moral there, folks. So some of these tracks were around in 94 already, including the Indigo remix, which was first released on Inter One, which I had in this series, and which was on the first mixtape that I got from Jay of the Odyssey parties. And there was a whole bunch of tracks here that I was debating doing. I was thinking of Scarab, which I love, Starchild for sure. I was thinking of Starchild, by the way, one of the reasons I wanted to do that track is because there's a great story behind it. But I can just tell you the story and feature another track. So that's what I'm going to do. Nick Taylor, who was one half of Prana at the time, right? The duo was Nick Taylor and Tsuyoshi Suzuki. Nick was at home playing some music, and his 2-year-old son, Jazz, looked at the speakers and said, "This isn't music, this is energy." 2 years old. So, Starchild is basically, suggesting, connotation of a cosmically connected child. So it was Nick who recorded those words, but it was the words originally spoken by his 2-year-old, who is now 32. So I considered that track for the series, but I really wanted to use one that I think is underplayed, but which I absolutely adore. And that is Moretsu, the Indigo and Baraka mix. Now, Indigo and Baraka mix because it uses samples or sounds that were used in those two tracks by Prana. Moretsu is a Japanese word to mean like stormy and sort of powerful, and it sort of has this kind of very, intense, powerful connotation. This is a track that Tsuyoshi wrote on his own when Nick was away at the time, so at his studio in Brixton in London. I think I first heard this when I first heard Tsuyoshi. So I remember the moment, as everybody knows, they don't. I remember quite a lot. I remember when I first heard Tsuyoshi Behind the Decks was at an Odyssey party, which was being held at the Token Rose Cafe. It was like this cafe that used to operate up top, and in the basement and sub-basement was a photo studio in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And so, there were no stragglers who went into those parties, those Odyssey parties. It was, just people who knew about it because it was out of the way. It wasn't in the club district. And I'd been going to a few of those parties, and this was a month after I first heard Ollie. So I remember it was November 19th. Remember that because it's exactly a week before my birthday, which is also Tsuyoshi's birthday, even though we didn't know that at the time. And at Odyssey, they played a range of music. Not just exclusive Goa sound. And Jay was brilliant with how he did this, and his partner Mayuri at the time also played some very trippy, housey, psychedelic kind of stuff. But that I still had sort of ringing in my ears, but not something I could quite grasp. The sounds that I'd heard when I'd heard Ollie a month earlier in the middle of October '94. That party that just blew my mind, and for where I first saw the term Goa being used. And so I remember when this transition came between one DJ and the next at this party on November 19th, and I just remember the beginning of the track sounding exactly like this, and then hearing these sounds and just saying, it's that kind of music, it's that thing, that stuff from that event. I still didn't quite have any words for it. I hadn't heard the term Goa Trance yet. So I ran downstairs and got a couple of friends who had been at that party and said, it's that stuff. And we went back up. So I can't say for certain that it was this track, but it certainly sounded like it. It was certainly, a Prana track, I'm sure. So I think this is an underappreciated track because there are some other ones that were more widely played. I'm sure, Kiba, Indigo, Starchild. And Moretsu, I've just always really liked as a result, and because of also a whole number of sounds and patterns that are going on in this track. I think it's an underappreciated classic. So we are going to listen to it now. So here we go. The Indigo and Baraka mix, the only one that I know of that's been available, of Moretsu by Prana. Just some cool sounds, little alien sounds at the beginning, and then pretty much just go straight in there, right? With this Morse code bass, pretty simple, but also all these other spacey sounds going on. Buttons up and down figurations. There comes the percussion, and then those ups and downs and those weird alien-like sounds. Those whooshes, there's just not nearly enough of that kind of stuff going on now. On a big system, this really hits you. It really just goes through your body when you're, especially outdoors, but when you're listening to this on a big system. So now, this classic riff that we're going to hear throughout this track. So it goes up a minor third and down a second. So again, we have that kind of Goa harmonic little stem here. Again, you know, that whooshy stuff that I don't know why people aren't doing now, but they really should. We've got some hand claps and all kinds of other sounds. And a very cool break where the kick just drops out a little bit. Incorporating some elements that we've heard already. And then we have some sounds that also I think are from Scarab as well. This sort of real, extraterrestrial. I keep saying that, but that's really what it sounds like. Just really otherworldly, spacey kind of sounds. And just the way they punctuate the whole soundscape is quite amazing. And this riff, there's the harmonica loop, right, which just repeats and really loops you in. We have this other stuff that's climbing up. Sounds like some voices in there as well. Cool little break here. Remember that Tsuyoshi was a percussionist, right? So this is all second nature to him. And now this sound, where it's got this rhythm and also this really cosmic sound that's like raining sort of lighter energy down on you. What's really cool about this riff as well is it doesn't hit on the first beat. Right, so it's the rhythm sort of throws you off and builds up more tension, and then here, you know, together with that whoosh, right, really intense climax. This is the sort of stuff, you know, if you're listening outdoors on a big system under the stars, I mean, this is just a whole other dimension. And that riff comes back. So again, how many layers are happening simultaneously? It's almost like, which beat is it going to come down on, right? It's not as square as the music has come to be. And some cool, some other Prana chords in there. Gurgling sounds. There's a whole lot of different sounds going on here, right? Very cool little break here. And very effective. It's not introducing new material, really, unlike the breaks that are in newer tracks nowadays. It's all content that's related to what we've been listening to and dancing to. The notes that are behind that pattern, and a little rhythmic and this climbing pattern, just like cranking up the tension. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty basic but powerful. Simple can work. And then all those other elements that are coming in and adding tension to it. The kick comes back. Again, another whooshy this next cycle of 8 bars. Right, it's now on another register and octave and that loop comes back. And this very cool transition here. It's from Indigo. That voice from Baraka. I'm not exactly sure what he's saying, but this great build-up. Just love that echoing voice. And it sounds like it's from Scarab, that sort of screeching insect in there. And so cosmic. You know, those high energy protons spilling over into our atmosphere. I mean, what is it in here that sounds like it comes from our planet? Not a whole lot. Breaks out. And just again, some of those patterns remaining at the end of the track where the DJ would be mixing in something else. Whew. I mean, it's really, really cosmic stuff. And I think this is what stood out for me, you know, when well, what I remember actually was one of the impressions when I first heard Ollie in October 94, and then when I heard Tsuyoshi playing a month later, in November 94, how this music just didn't sound like it was from this planet. There's elements that you recognize, you know, percussion or something like that, but these sounds are just so not from our sphere that they immediately take you out of the normal context that you relate to sound and music through and put you in a different space. And then together with, you know, whether you're outdoors under the stars or if you're in a club and there's cool decorations and lighting effects and, you know, UV reactive clothing and decorations and so on that help your eyes see beyond their normal visible spectrum, there's this whole opening and shift of a paradigm. And that's, I think, part of, you know, this whole package that really drew us into the scene at the time was that it was all so different. Not just, oh yeah, this music is just a little bit different. It's like the whole thing, the whole packaging, the whole setting, the whole set, the whole, you know, what you were perceiving through all of your senses, more than 5 of them, it certainly felt like. It was just all really impactful. So this track has been, you know, when I first got this album, that was one that really stood out, and it just really reminded me of that sound that I first heard at that party, that reminded me of the sounds that I'd heard when I first heard Ollie. So there we go. We are now at the beginning of 2024, so it's the beginning of my 30th anniversary year in this scene. It is also Prana's 30th anniversary year. And they are releasing a vinyl set, which will be followed by a CD set entitled Sense of Unity, where it's the unification of the 3 musicians who are part of 2 separate sets of Prana, right? The first incarnation of Tsuyoshi and Nick Taylor. And then after Nick left to go back to Australia, Andy Guthrie joined Tsuyoshi to sort of create Prana V2, as I refer to it. And we'll be referring to them and that incarnation very soon in the 96-97 season, because of course there's a few key tracks, one in particular that I will be referring to. But so, you know, it's this combination of anniversaries right now with the brilliant Prana group creating new music, and where you can really hear, you know what, you can hear new music that's got these trademark elements, and it's also got the advantage of modern production, different elements that have been brought into the music since, but a lot of elements that have been missing in recent music, but which these three vintage musicians are putting into their new productions. So on that note, I will sign off here and leave you with the complete track without my commentary so that you can greater appreciate, I hope, its magnificence. So I'm Mark, DJ Solitaire, signing off now and leaving you with the Prana masterpiece, Moretsu.
and